Guys, now this we're reviewing, continuing my Underworld movie reviews. As you guys know, I reviewed the first Underworld, and now in this video I will be reviewing the sequel, and that of course is the 2006 sequel to Underworld, fantasy, horror, whatever you want to call it, sequel, Underworld Evolution. Now, this movie, while I enjoyed Underworld as much as I did enjoy it, I really was not sure if I was going to like this movie, because Underworld is a movie that's very rare. I mean, so many times you have a movie like Underworld and it's terrible, where it's laughable and it's dumb. And Underworld maybe is a little bit dumb and it was a little bit over the top, but it was suitably over the top. You know, I could handle it. I thought it had a good, some good elements with character, some good elements of story. Little too much exposition in the first movie, but I felt okay. There's still stuff they can do in the second movie, though I really had no idea where they were gonna go. So I really wasn't sure if I was gonna like this movie. I heard a lot of people saying this movie was better than the first one, and I really wasn't sure how this was going to be. And I have to say, after watching Underworld Evolution, this is a completely different movie. Like, Underworld was a film that I definitely enjoyed, but if you liked Underworld, this is a completely different movie in every way. It's a lot more action-packed. There's hardly that much of a story, really, and well, let's just get into it, because I really do want to talk about this movie. First of all, the plot of this movie is very interesting, because about the first 15 or so minutes, they give you a recap of the entire first film. So if you guys haven't seen the first movie, you're good. You can just go into this movie free and watch it. It's like they don't want you to watch the other movie because they feel people are lazy, and that right off the bat is dumb. I don't know why I decided to give you like a 4-minute recap of everything that went down, and it goes on for like 4 minutes or so. But they make you think that this movie is going to be, the events of what happened with the first movie with Krennic and everything. They make you think that he is going to be going after them, and that he's going to be, the main villain of this movie, and that's going to be like kind of a revenge film with them taking him down and things like that. And they do a good job of setting that up, but he's killed within the first, like, I'd say 5 minutes after that. So, okay, I was fine with that. I figured, okay, they didn't really know what to do with the character. People didn't like him in the first movie. Maybe they just had to let him go. I kind of understood. I was okay with it, and I was willing to give the movie the benefit of the doubt. However, the movie goes on, and there's not much else going on. Throughout the rest of this movie, we see, did I say Krennic? I meant Craven. I don't know why I said Krennic. Basically, throughout the rest of this movie, you have Celine and Michael. They're kind of on the run, and they're kind of trying to get away from everything that happened. And they end up encountering Marcus, who is the oldest living vampire, and he wants to do what he can to free his brother William, who is the oldest living Lycan, and that's the entire movie. It's them trying to save his brother, also trying to get the hell away, and that's basically a plot overall. Let's just get into this, because I really want to talk about this movie overall, and really where I think this went wrong. So because while I thought the acting was actually one of the strong points, surprisingly, in the first movie, I really don't know if I can say much about the acting, because there's not really a ton to say. I mean, Kate Beckinsale is still really good as Celine, who, let me just say, kicks a lot more ass in this movie. Like, I'm not saying she didn't in the first movie, but the first movie, I mean, she feels like very, very tame compared to this movie. I mean, there's a lot more ass kicking, so if you guys want more of that, then you'll definitely get your fair share of that. However, just like the first movie, they do nothing with her character, and even more so in this movie. I mean, at least in the first movie, we understood why she doesn't like Lycans, because Lycans killed her, family and things like that. We understood that. We understood very well why she doesn't why she goes after the Lycans and why she is this death dealer. However, in this movie, they do nothing with her character. She's there, she's helping out Marcus, but other than that, she really doesn't do much. She just kind of narrates the movie, she kicks ass, and that's really it. And it didn't really work much for me. Kate Beckinsale's good in the role, definitely, but they didn't really give her anything to do and didn't really utilize the role in the way that I feel they could have. I mean, they could have done more with her. You have the perfect opportunity to do more with this character. She's on the run in this movie. Have her delve into her past. Have her come clean to Michael about some things. They just don't really do that with her, and it kind of upset me. However, that's not as upsetting as what they are doing with Scott Speedman in this movie, which is literally nothing. I mean, the majority of Michael in this movie is him sitting in a car, trying to figure out what to do, contemplating if he wants to get involved or not, kind of just standing there, him talking to her, him getting information. I mean, they really, you can tell, while this character's here, they have, now that the plot doesn't roll around, they have literally no idea what to do with him. And I'm not saying these two don't have good chemistry, because they do. I mean, there's some really good scenes between them, but they're cut short by all the action in the movie. And Scott Speedman in general really did get the short end of the stick here. He has almost nothing to do. He's kind of just there, and when the events that happen at the end of the movie do happen, I was kind of happy, because it feels like he's kind of just here waiting for them to give him something to do, and they really don't till the end of the movie. And I'll talk about why that kind of upset me in general. So Scott Speedman really, I wasn't quite sure why he needed to be here. I honestly feel they should have just killed him in the last movie, because they clearly don't know how to use him here. And then Tony Curran plays the villain in this movie, Marcus, who really isn't much of a villain, honestly. In fact, he actually commends them for killing Victor. He says, look, Victor, you know, was kind of a dick, and he did some terrible things, and yeah, you had the right to kill him. And, you know, he's trying to find his brother William, who's a Lycan, but that's pretty much the extent of his character. Now, they try to develop his character. They really do. The problem is, his character is extremely bland, and there's really not much to him. And especially for someone who is the oldest living vampire, they really don't delve deep into that story, because, again, it's short, you know, it's cut short by action, and that's something that really is a problem with most of the acting in this movie. The acting really does not stand out, because the way the rest of the movie is done, which, let's just get into this, because I definitely do want to talk about my overall flaw with this movie overall. So the directing here, I believe, is directed by the same person. Len Wiseman directed this movie, who I believe did do the first one. And this one, while I think that the tone was very well balanced in the first movie, and I thought they did a good job of having, you know, really good action scenes, but also some really good character development, this movie does not know how to do that. In fact, I think it's two steps back from what the movie really should be doing. I mean, this is extremely style over substance, to the point where there's not really much of a story, like I said. This very much felt like a video game, and not in a good way. I said the first one felt like one because you feel like you're watching a video game being played. This one feels like a video game. It feels like something that would be a really fun video game, but not really a movie. And that's something that doesn't really work here, is that there's not really much of a story to begin with, and when the dramatic beats happen, you don't really care. You know, they just happen too quickly, and especially the story with Marcus, I just couldn't get into it, honestly. I wanted to care about what was going on, I really did, but I just couldn't get into it, because there just wasn't really much happening there. Again, they don't really do a ton with the story. They don't take the time to focus on the characters. And as ridiculous as the first movie was, as you know, I enjoyed it. And the thing that I enjoy about the first movie is that they did take time with those characters. They did take the time to get you into this conflict. They did take the time to get you to know who these people really are. This movie really does not do that. And any time that there's anything that's not action going on, the movie's quite boring. There's really not much happening when there's not action going on, which, let's just get into the movie, because the action, they really, really stepped it up in this film. I mean, you can tell that they did everything in their power to make sure that this had more action than the first one, and I get it. You know, most people are going to go to these movies, they want to see a lot of action, and maybe they were kind of let down by the first one because there wasn't as much action, and there's more action, but that doesn't mean that you completely implode the movie with just tons of action, because that's exactly what they do. The entire film is just so action heavy, and it really started to get annoying. I mean, it got really tedious after a while, and it really seemed like they did this because they didn't really know what to do with the story, and so they kind of used this as a way to stall things. So they'll be like, okay guys, let's have this action scene here, then we can come up with what happens next. The problem is they didn't put in that compelling story. They didn't put in those interesting plot elements to really keep me invested into what was going on. And while the action is really, really great, I mean, there's this really well done car chase, there's this really awesome end fight. I mean, the action scenes are pretty damn great in this movie, and it's very entertaining when there's that action going on. And Kate Beckinsale does a really good job kicking ass and things like that. But when the action isn't going on, when it's all said and done, you know, there's really not much else happening. And you're really wondering, why is this really happening? I honestly didn't know. I'm not gonna lie. Most of the action scenes, I couldn't figure out why they were happening. I just felt like they were happening because they didn't know what else to do with the movie, so they just randomly put them in here. And it's definitely shown. I mean, Kevin Grevioux, who was one of the producers here, he didn't even come back for this movie. In fact, a large chunk of the cast is completely gone. It's just Michael and Celine. Those are the only original cast members from the first movie. Why decided to do this? I don't know. There were other characters that live and they could have kept around. There was that girl, Erica, I believe her name was. She's not in this movie. Like I said, Craven's killed within like the first 15 minutes, and Bill Nighy's in this for like a minute. And I will give that. I will say the first opening scene of this movie is one of my favorite parts. I think the opening scene here was incredibly well done. I really did love the way that the opening scene was done. I thought that it perfectly got us into the relationship of, who Marcus was, who Victor was, and who Amelia was, and it kind of makes me interested in the next movie because I did enjoy the stuff in the past, and I know the next movie is in fact a prequel, so I kind of feel like I might like Rise of the Lycans, which, speaking of the Lycans, even, you remember that great vampire Lycan conflict that pretty much drove the entire movie? Yeah, they're barely in this movie, really. The Lycans are only used maybe once, and that's only to have Celine kill them, and just to see Lycans, and they're kind of just here. Like, they very much feel like an afterthought. In fact, most of the stuff that's not action very much feels like an afterthought. It doesn't feel like it's, natural. It doesn't feel like there's really a story here. It just feels like I'm watching a bunch of action scenes that don't really have that compelling of a story, and it really does show throughout this entire film, and it really does weigh down the film heavily because of that. And again, I get what they were trying to do, but they really did fail miserably, and it's just because they didn't really take that time to think about, what do we really want to do in the sequel. They didn't take that time, because that it really does show throughout this entire film. Now, the editing as well is very frenetic. It's very, very fast-paced. There's really not a second to breathe in this movie. There's maybe a couple scenes of conversation, but rarely is there time to breathe. There's like action happening every 25 seconds, and again, not a horrible thing because the action's good, but there's just not enough happening in between these action scenes to make us feel that tension and to make us feel like, that sense of urgency. I didn't have any sense of urgency throughout this movie. Honestly, I kind of just watched it. I didn't really care what would happen to the characters because, again, they don't really do anything compelling with them. They don't set up anything to begin with. There's not really a reason for me to be rooting for these characters. It just kind of felt like this action was there, and it just didn't really work in the way the first movie did. The first movie did a good job of having ridiculous action, but only when it needed to. It had ridiculous action throughout the movie because it is definitely an action film, but it also had a lot of talking scenes because they need to set up mythology. And in the beginning of the film, it looks like they're going to delve more into that, but they just don't, and I'm not entirely sure why, especially when you have someone like Marcus, who is the perfect connective tissue to all of this, basically. He knows Victor, he knows, Lucy, and he knows all those characters. Why not just have him in this movie, talk about them for a little bit? But no, they don't really do that. They really do cut it short, and it really does show in this film, definitely. So now I do want to get into a quick spoiler for this film because there's one thing in this movie that really, really pissed me off. So if you guys haven't seen Underworld Evolution, you're honestly fine. I really don't think that you need to watch this movie. Honestly, you should probably just watch the first one because this movie just felt really unnecessary to me, and I'm going to talk about why, especially this ending. This ending is so dumb, honestly. It really does show how unimportant this movie really was, because we get to the ending. She does, in fact, take down Marcus or whatever, this ridiculous scene where we see her end up destroying Marcus and things like that, and how we see Alexander, who ends up blowing himself up and, killing himself by blowing up his own ship, which was interesting to see. But then you get to the end of the movie, and we see that Michael, like I said, he's kind of staying there throughout most of the movie, but Marcus ends up fighting Michael, taking him down, which didn't make a ton of sense to me. I mean, his brother is a Lycan. Why is he trying to take down Michael? It just felt like it kind of happened, only for Michael to be killed at the end of this movie, and that really pissed me off, I have to say. I didn't feel any sort of urgency. It felt so predictable, and it felt like Michael was only here because they wanted to kill him off. They wanted to kill him off. They wanted to extinguish his character so they can continue to make further films, and I'm not entirely sure why they made other movies after this, because honestly, where else can this go? I honestly have no idea where this is going to go after this. It doesn't really make much sense to me. I get that Celine Celine can now be in the daylight, which is so stupid, honestly. That twist with her now being able to be in the daylight and no longer have to worry about burning in the sunlight. It's just dumb. It seems like it's just there because they want to end on some sort of cliffhanger that shows there's still more they can do. But honestly, this really should have been the last movie. I feel like ending it with Michael and her being able, she even says in the beginning, there's a new piece here, and it feels like that would have been a good ending for the film. But of course, the studio clearly got greedy, and there's more going on. So I really don't know what else is going to happen here. And like I said, Michael just being there to kill him to die basically just really did piss me off. It really made me feel how pointless this really was, and it really made me feel like I kind of wasted my time watching both these films. I mean, it really kind of sucks when they develop Michael as much as they did in the first one, only for him to just die in this one, have a couple scenes and then die, and it very much felt very weightless. It felt very pointless, and overall felt like this movie was just made just to kind of tie up loose ends and I guess give Celine her own film, which I feel like this kind of should have been in the first place. So overall, guys, Underworld Evolution is really not that great of a sequel. It's very different than the first movie. It's a lot more action-packed, but I will say this. If you love the action in Underworld and you don't want a compelling story, you don't really care about the story, you'll probably love this movie because there's tons of action throughout the entire story. It permeates the entire film. It's almost non-stop. It's, like I said, kind of tenuous at times how much there really is. There's a lot more graphic violence, so they really go all out when it comes to the violence. There's not much for the Lycans to do, and there's really not much in terms of character, but in terms of action, this is a pretty great sequel for action. But it really lacked a compelling story. It lacked just compelling stuff overall, and in my opinion, it's very forgettable. I really couldn't see myself watching this movie again. I could see myself watching the action movies again, but if I really decide between this and Underworld, I really would probably just watch the first one again. And I am going to give Underworld Evolution a 3 out of 5 or a C+, just because there were some scenes that were really entertaining. I thought the action scenes for the most part were fun, and I thought that opening scene was well done. But this is the perfect example of a sequel that was made because the first one was successful. They didn't know what else to do with it, and they kind of just ran with the concept. They didn't do anything with it. They dropped it very quickly, and in the end, it just felt like this movie was just made kind of to show that they're still going to make more Underworld film, which I really don't understand why there's more after this movie. And anyways, guys, this is my review of Underworld Evolution. Up to this point, I feel like I'm going to like the next movie. Like I said, I like the past stuff. I heard the movie's more story-driven. I kind of want to see a different take on that. But I really don't know if I'm going to like the other ones. I think Awakening, Blood Wars, I don't think I'm going to like either of those, but we'll have to see. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Maybe you like this movie more. If you do, I understand why, but I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for, I'm not sure exactly what's going to be for, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.